Welcome back to Pokemon Episode Summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 215, the Corsola Caper. The episode begins with Ash and the gang finally arriving on Yellow Rock Island after taking the ferry there, meaning that they now only had to pass just one more island before they could get to Red Rock Island, where the main Whirlpool Cup was held, as the challenges weren't really necessary to participate on the other islands. You more so just needed to prove that you passed through the islands and did something on them, so that you could prove that you had experience with water Pokemon. As Ash and the gang walked on Yellow Rock Isle, they eventually realized that the rocks were indeed yellow, as were the streets of the first town that they came across, being Maggie City. Ash and the gang were tired of just walking around aimlessly at this point, so they decided to stay in Maggie City for a while before continuing on to check out the sights there, since it seemed like a relatively nice place. Unfortunately, though, there wasn't really much of interest in the town, with the exception of a unique gift shop that Misty went into, and noticed how there was a few jewelry-like objects made of pink crystal being sold. Misty was very enchanted by the items, and picked one up that looked like a crystal stick of some kind. When she picked it up and admired it for a while, the shop clerk then came by and mentioned that all the items were made with parts from Corsola horns that they shed every so often, clarifying that every single item that he sold was made with Corsola material. As you may expect, upon Misty hearing that these items were made from Corsola, it just made her want them even more, and she was reminded of how she wanted to catch a Corsola, and stated this to both the shop clerk and Ash. The clerk, however, ignores Misty and turns his attention to Pikachu, complimenting it, calling it extremely cute. Misty questions why the clerk liked Pikachu so much, leading the clerk to reveal that he liked Pikachu because he was yellow, clarifying that everyone on Yellow Rock Island liked yellow Pokemon, because, Yellow Rock Island, they just fucking love the color yellow. Misty didn't want Ash and Pikachu to get all the attention, so she decided to send out a yellow Pokemon of her own, being Psyduck, and sure enough, the clerk complimented Psyduck as well. Misty was very grateful that Psyduck was actually useful to her for once, but of course, Psyduck then ran off as it was being complimented, leading Misty and Brock and Ash to chase after Psyduck. And eventually, Ash, Brock, and Misty chased Psyduck all the way to a beach after going through an alleyway where it had run off to and hid behind some rocks. Misty proceeded to yell at Psyduck for failing to do the one thing that she wanted it to do, which was just stand there and be admired. When suddenly, Psyduck begins to get upset, and Misty believes this was just Psyduck acting up in response to her yells. However, she soon realizes that this wasn't the case, as Psyduck then pointed to what at first seemed to be nothing, leading Misty to question why her Psyduck was acting so strange. However, just then, a floating house appears on the ocean, being what Psyduck was trying to show Ash and the gang. Ash and Brock were amazed by this floating house. However, Misty clarified that it was probably just a boathouse and didn't understand why Psyduck was so enamored by it. Just then, though, a Corsola comes out. Misty is initially enamored by this. However, Ash, Brock, and Misty are no longer enamored when they see a girl come out of the house and scream for help. Ash and the gang question why the girl was scared, only to see a whirlpool approaching the house, threatening to suck it in. Ash and the gang wanted to help, but they didn't know how they could get to the house, only for Misty to luckily spot a left-behind speedboat from somebody that was abandoned, so Ash and the gang decided to use it as they sped off to rescue the girl at the house, with Brock driving. Unfortunately, by the time Ash and the gang arrived at the house, the whirlpool was already pulling it in, and Ash and the gang didn't have any reasonable way to pull it out, making their attempt to rescue the girl very difficult. Thankfully, though, Ash then got the idea to send out his Bulbasaur and Bayleaf to use Vine Whip. By this point, though, Ash and the gang's boat was also heading into the whirlpool, so Ash decided to divide and conquer, so to speak, as he commanded his Bulbasaur to latch his Vine Whip onto the boat, and commanded his Bayleaf to latch its Vine Whip onto the house. As a result of this, Bulbasaur, with his Vine Whip, was able to pull the boat out of the whirlpool, and Bayleaf was able to drag the house along with them, pulling the house out of the whirlpool as well, until eventually the boat arrived at the beach, and the house fell on the beach as well. Thanks in part also to Brock's driving skills. The girl and her Corsola then jump off the house and onto the beach, as her father and her older sister come running towards her and make sure that she was okay. They then spot Ash and the gang and clarify that they were busy in town and they had left their daughter at the house while they were there, and thanked Ash and the gang for their assistance when the girl explained how they had saved her. And the girl's sister and father then introduce the girl as Mika, and practically beg to give Ash and the gang something in return for saving her. Brock then begins to flirt with the older sister, finding her super beautiful, and says that she could repay him by telling him her name, leading the older sister to reveal her name as Andrea. Misty, knowing that Brock was just doing his regular simp routine as usual, tells Andrea to ignore Brock and drags him away by the ear, interrupting Brock as he was just about to ask her on a date. Ash, coming to the conclusion that the house was not a boathouse, asks how a regular-ass house ended up in the middle of the ocean, with Andrea vaguely responding that it was because of Corsola. Thankfully, Andrea then goes into more detail, explaining that many houses in Yellow Rock Isle were built by the coast on some rock formations made by Corsola, which acted as their nests. Ash and the gang questioned why families would build their homes on top of Corsola nests, leading Andrea to reveal that this meant that the townsfolk could be closer to the Corsola, which they needed to be, since so many townsfolk, including her father, were Corsola horn artists, adding that a lot of families would take the Corsola from their nests and raise them as their own, so that they could grab the parts of their horns that they eventually would shed and use them for their creations, such as the jewelry that Misty had saw that clerk selling earlier. Mika's father then jumped in, explaining that the Corsola horn creations were very important to Yellow Rock Island, as it was what made Yellow Rock Island famous and a relatively popular tourist destination. Misty was fascinated by anything to do with Corsola, although she was still curious on what any of this had to do with the house being washed away. This led Andrea to reveal that the added weight of all the Corsola inside their nest was what kept the rock nest in place and prevented it from rolling off, since the Corsola would stick themselves in the rocks, keeping them situated. However, today, a random-ass Corsola that wasn't part of the nest that Mika and her family were situated on had come by, and Mika instantly took a liking to it and went up to go play with it, expecting this Corsola to stay in one spot, as the other Corsola did, anticipating that she would just, pet it a little bit and everything would be fine. However, this Corsola wasn't like the other Corsola in that it didn't like to stay in one spot, so when Mika tried to touch it, Corsola tried to touch Mika back by using tackle on it, and Mika got frightened by this, so she started to run away, leading the Corsola to chase after her. In the process, the Corsola got knocked into all the other Corsola who were just sitting in the rocks, and this knocked all of the Corsola out of the rocks and caused them to run away in fear, and as a result, the rocks became unstable, therefore making the house unstable as well, causing the rocks to break and the house to fall off the rocks into the sea. As the Corsola had now ended up on the beach with Mika, obviously, Mika tried to defend the Corsola, stating that it tried to help her when it found out that it had caused the house to go off the rocks, but clarified that the Corsola didn't really do that much at the end of the day. This led Andrea to yell at the Corsola again. However, Mika tried to defend it again, claiming that she now viewed it as her pet, even though the family didn't own it. Andrea didn't care though, and continued to yell at the Corsola, causing the Corsola to run away and hide behind Pikachu, wanting to use it as protection, only for Corsola to then tackle it, trying to convince Pikachu to protect her as he was running away, though of course, this tackle just made Pikachu run away even more. The Corsola didn't understand this, as it viewed tackling as its way of affection, which was also why it tried to tackle Mika. Despite Pikachu running away, Corsola eventually did manage to tackle it, as Pikachu got knocked into Psyduck, knocking it down as well. Brock told Misty that she should probably recall Psyduck, as it seemed pretty shaken up from falling over, but Misty was too focused on watching this Corsola, as she had realized that since the family didn't own it, it was wild, so she could catch it for herself, finally netting herself a Corsola. So she tried to throw a Pokeball on it, only for Brock to pull her away by the ear in the same way that she did to him, warning her that her obsession with Corsola was more dangerous than his obsession with girls, and stated that Misty should once again recall her Psyduck. Andrea, Mika, and their father then state how they were extremely worried that all their Corsola were now gone, as now without the Corsola, they couldn't fix their house and live normally. So they requested that Ash and the gang help them locate all of their now missing Corsola that had run off, and Ash and the gang agreed to help. Meanwhile, back in the town, Team Rocket were on the roof of the jewelry shop that Misty had visited earlier, and were planning to break in to steal some of the jewelry. As they opened up a panel on the roof and saw that no one was inside the shop's warehouse, where all the jewelry was stored, Team Rocket decided to drop down with some ropes and begin their theft. However, when James dropped down, he fell off his rope and screamed, leading Jesse and Meowth to cover his mouth and shush him. Ironically, despite Jesse and Meowth making it down totally fine, secret agent style, when they shushed James, they ended up being louder than his actual fall. This didn't seem to blow Team Rocket's cover though, so they proceeded to walk around the warehouse and eventually found a box containing a stash full of Corsola jewelry that was already constructed, just waiting to be put on display. All of Team Rocket were extremely happy having found this box of jewelry as they opened it up. Although James and Meowth were more of a regular level of happy, just a regular dose of happy. But Jessie, on the other hand, when she found a crown made from Corsola, was extremely enamored by it and put it on, imagining herself running a wealthy kingdom as a queen, and fantasizing for a long-ass time about this, stating someone as beautiful as her should live a life of luxury. However, James and Meowth interrupt her fantasies, reminding her to help them steal as many objects from the box as she can, as opposed to just sitting there doing nothing but fantasize. Jessie eventually obliges, stopping her fantasies and helping James and Meowth loot as much stuff as possible. However, it's revealed that the clerk from earlier did hear Jessie and Meowth's shush and had came to the warehouse as a result to investigate. This eventually led the clerk to discover Team Rocket, leading Team Rocket to drop all their loot with the exception of Jessie's crown and run off with the clerk chasing after them. Meanwhile, Ash and the gang, along with Mika, her sister, and her father, were all walking along a road from the beach back to the town, talking about how they were trying to find Corsola but couldn't find them anywhere. Just then, Team Rocket ran into them, coming in the opposite direction since they were running away from the town. Team Rocket tried to run past Ash and the gang as the clerk was still chasing them, but Ash and the gang stopped them in their tracks and questioned what the fuck Team Rocket was up to, knowing that it couldn't be good. With Team Rocket stopped, the clerk stops as well, thereby cornering Team Rocket, with Ash and the gang on one side of them and the clerk on the other. Now that Team Rocket had stopped moving, Ash and the gang, Mika, her sister, and her father could all get a better look at them, and it was then that Mika's father noticed the crown on Jessie's head and recognized it as he was the one who designed the crown and then gave it to the clerk to sell. The clerk confirms this, stating that Team Rocket had stolen the crown, along with a few other pieces of jewelry that Team Rocket had somehow managed to grab as they were running away, even though they initially thought that they grabbed nothing else. This leads Ash and the gang to demand that Team Rocket return the jewelry, but Team Rocket obviously refused, taunting Ash and the gang for a while, with Jessie stating that she would never give up the crown, thereby giving up her dreams of monarchy and wealth. The Corsola that was responsible for scaring away all the other Corsola still felt bad about this, and how it wasn't able to save Mika earlier, so it decided to take action and tackle Jessie to the ground, knocking the crown right off her head, making Jessie very angry as she insulted the Corsola, and then sent out her Arbok to go attack it, with James assisting by sending out his Victory Bell, although his Victory Bell ate him as usual. In order to help out the Corsola, Ash and Misty both send out their water Pokemon, with Misty sending out her Staryu, and Ash sending out his Totodile. Staryu uses Tackle on Victory Bell to knock it away, and Totodile tries to bite Arbok's tail. However, he fails as Arbok slithers away, leaving Totodile to try again, but this time instead of biting Arbok, he headbutts Arbok. Victory Bell then got back up and tried to help Arbok by using Razor Leaf on both Totodile and Staryu, but Staryu was able to protect Totodile and dodge itself by using Rapid Spin, knocking away Victory Bell in the process with the same attack. Corsola, Totodile, Pikachu, and Staryu then all team up, as Totodile and Staryu use their water guns, Pikachu uses Thunderbolt, and Corsola uses Tackle, and with all four of these attacks hitting Team Rocket at once, Team Rocket goes blasting off and drops the crown and the other pieces of jewelry, leading the clerk to retrieve them and thank Ash and the gang and Mika and her family for all their help before leaving back to his shop. However, before he goes, Andrea asks him if he saw any Corsola recently, explaining how they were missing a whole bunch, but unfortunately, the clerk confirms that he hasn't, leading Ash and the gang and Mika and her family to continue to search. Not having really tried that hard before. I mean, they hadn't even tried to use something that they could use to their benefit to find the Corsola, which was calling their names, which Andrea confirmed the Corsola all had, as the Corsola were all part of their family, so they felt like giving them names was appropriate. Andrea also confirmed that Corsola like to hang out in pairs, so they should be pretty easy to find if they could find two of them at once. Strangely, though, Ash and the gang and Mika and her family do manage to find a Corsola, but only one Corsola, not two, this Corsola being named Annie. As Ash and the gang try and search for the second Corsola that should have been in a pair with this one, Misty tries to catch the wild Corsola that was still with them. However, Brock pulls her away by the ear yet again, reminding her that finding this second Corsola was more important. Eventually, Ash and the gang are able to locate the second Corsola not too far from Annie, and they're reunited. Yay! Ash and the gang then tried to find the rest of the Corsola, although Misty pointed out that it was quite difficult, despite the Corsola seeming to appear in pairs, doubting that this was even the case. Fortunately, though, Misty was proved wrong, as Annie's mate that was part of its pair, Bonnie, then suddenly appeared from behind some bushes and reunited with Annie, and hopped into Mika's arms. This was only one pair of Corsola, and there was a whole lot of others to find, though, and they were proving very difficult to find. So, Brock suggested that he lay out some Pokemon food as a lure and see if any of the Corsola would come to it. Sure enough, another pair of Corsola do come to this food, after Ash and the gang and Mika and her family had left the area with the food to give the Corsola a chance to come out, and the Corsola begin eating. Ash and Andrea go to retrieve the two Corsola, but just then, the wild Corsola runs up to the pair and begins making noises at them, trying to befriend them, but the two Corsola are frightened by the wild Corsola and try to run away, although thankfully, Ash and Andrea were able to grab the two Corsola before they ran away. Yay! Meanwhile, Team Rocket were spying on Ash and the gang as they were finding some more Corsola, and Meowth declared that he knew that Giovanni would love to have an army of Corsola, and if Team Rocket gave them to him, then they would finally get that goddamn promotion that they were waiting for, and maybe even a celebration. As Meowth fantasizes about this in a vision, James goes to capture the Corsola, but Jessie stops him, stating that she had a better idea than just brute force capture. Meanwhile, back with Ash and the gang, Ash had decided to send out his Noctowl to do an area search for some Corsola, and eventually Noctowl returned from the search and reported to Ash and the gang that he had found two more, and led them to their location, being a beach. Noctowl lands next to the Corsola and distracts them for a few minutes, allowing Ash and the gang to catch up along with Mika and her family, and allow Ash and Andrea to grab the two Corsola before they ran away. Thanks, Noctowl. Very useful. Andrea then confirms that these two Corsola were named Donnie and Ronnie, and also reveals that only two more Corsola had to be found. So, Ash and the gang and Mika and her family begin searching yet again as they go back into the forest, with Mika leading them, and eventually they manage to find the last two Corsola they were looking for. Just to make sure that they did in fact have all the Corsola, Andrea then did a head count, and she confirmed that yes, all of the Corsola were in fact there. So, everyone was relieved, and Ash and the gang and Mika and her family then returned to their house that was still washed up on the beach, and decided to relax for a little bit, having earned it after having found all the Corsola. Misty didn't want to relax though, as she still wanted to catch the wild Corsola, so she tried to throw a Pokeball at it, but was stopped when she then spotted some cables flying down as they all went around the Corsola, tying them up and capturing them. Although, since Misty was close by to the wild one, she managed to kick the cable heading for it away, saving that Corsola, although all the other ones were still captured. Ash and the gang and Mika and her family then looked up into the sky to see where these cables had came from, only to see that it was of course Team Rocket who had attached these cables to the Meowth balloon and had now begun pulling the Corsola up, using the other end of the cables and then beginning to fly away, doing their motto in the process, and taunting Ash and the gang that they had done the hard work for them by locating all the Corsola, and now Team Rocket were going to reap all the rewards. Ash then sends out his Noctowl, commanding it to use Peck to pop a hole in the Meowth balloon and bring it down. However, before Noctowl can do this, James sends out his Weezing and has it use Smokescreen, which blocks Noctowl's vision. Jessie laughs at the Noctowl's presumed failure as she taunts that now with all of the Corsola, she can get plenty of jewelry to make her famous and achieve her dreams of becoming royalty. However, while Jessie was distracted by all her fantasies, Noctowl had actually managed to eventually get out of the smoke, even though it was trapped in there for a while, and then proceeds to pop a hole in the Meowth balloon by quick attacking very fast and then pecking it. As a result, the balloon obviously crashes, with Team Rocket and all of the Corsola falling out and onto the ground as Ash and the gang run up to the crashed balloon and confront Team Rocket. Team Rocket quickly get up and yell at Ash and the gang and Mika and her family for ruining their plans as usual, with Jessie complaining that she wanted the Corsola to be her slaves and her to be their queen, and now Ash and the gang had ruined that. Upon hearing what Jessie was going to do with the Corsola, the wild Corsola got angry and proceeded to tackle her. With Jessie down once again, and James and Meowth still down, Misty takes the opportunity to send out her Staryu and has it use Rapid Spin to cut the cables so that the Corsola could now go free. This makes Team Rocket angry enough to get back up as Jessie sends out her Arbok and James sends out his Victreebel, although Victreebel first eats James as usual. All of the family's Corsola then decide to help out Staryu by tackling Arbok together. Victreebel tries to help Arbok by using Razor Leaf on all the Corsola, but all the Corsola are able to dodge the leaves. Staryu then goes to help out the Corsola by tackling Victreebel, leading Arbok to then try and save Victreebel by wrapping Staryu. However, before Arbok can fully get off its wrap, all the Corsola return to it and tackle it yet again. Victreebel then decided to focus on the wild Corsola, who was by herself and not with all the other Corsola, so Victreebel used Divine Whip on it to grab it and smash it into a rock. Misty panicked as the wild Corsola looked defeated. However, the wild Corsola then used Recover to heal itself, making it ready for battle once again, which impressed Misty and only made her want it even more, since she had rarely seen a Pokemon use Recover before. When the wild Corsola recovered, it was very angry at Team Rocket for that tough attack, and managed to rile up all of the other Corsola together, who were also angry at Team Rocket just for how annoying they were not going down to any of their attacks. And together, all of the Corsola started to charge up their strongest attack, Spike Cannon, which they then fired at Team Rocket. Team Rocket tried to run away and escape from the incoming attack as they hid behind the remains of their Meowth balloon basket. But one of the spike cannons then hit the burner of the Meowth balloon, which was still flaming even after the balloon had popped, and as a result, the burner exploded, exploding the remains of the Meowth balloon and sending Team Rocket flying, blasting off, for like the 500th time this episode, which they point out extremely frustrated at the fact that they blasted off more than once. After seeing the powerful spike cannon, Misty just wanted this wild Corsola even more, and she congratulated the wild Corsola on doing so well against Team Rocket, before explaining to it that she wanted to battle it for her respect and capture it so she could prove that she was a water Pokemon master, stating how strong the Corsola was. Corsola liked Misty's compliment, so she agreed to battle Misty and would become her Pokemon if she was able to beat it. So Misty sent out her Poliwhirl, and the battle began. Poliwhirl started off with Bubble, which was able to do quite a bit of damage to Corsola, but Corsola was able to recover, not literally using Recover, and tackled Poliwhirl. Although this tackle did send Poliwhirl sliding back, Poliwhirl was able to counter by going up to the Corsola again and using Double Slap, slapping it so many times that Corsola blacked out for a few seconds. Misty thought that she'd be able to capture it now, but then the Corsola ended up using Recover to make herself able to battle yet again, and making all of Poliwhirl's previous attacks useless. Misty realizes that she was going to have to win really fast, and managed to catch Corsola off guard so that it couldn't use Recover when it got injured enough. So, Poliwhirl goes and uses Water Gun, but Corsola deflects the attack right back at it with a Mirror Coat. Poliwhirl then tries to use Bubble, but Corsola wasn't very effective, and charged ahead, tackling Poliwhirl. But now that Corsola was super up close to Poliwhirl from the tackle, Poliwhirl then used another Double Slap, followed by a tackle of its own. These attacks were enough to almost knock out Corsola again, and Misty feared that it would use Recover again, as did Brock. So, Brock warned her to throw her Lure Ball, since it was so good at catching water Pokemon, right away so that Corsola wouldn't have time to use Recover. Misty does exactly this, throwing her Lure Ball. And although it did take quite a while for the Lure Ball to stop shaking, Misty eventually caught the Corsola, leading her to celebrate immensely. She had actually done it. She had captured the Pokemon that she had wanted to capture for quite a few episodes at this point. Mika, Andrea, and their father then thank Ash and the gang for all their help with getting their Corsola back, and confirms that they would try their best to make sure that their Corsola never ran off again, with Andrea warning Misty to make sure that her Corsola never ran off either, stating that she should do her absolute best to take care of it. Misty responded that she definitely would do her best to take care of it, stating that it was now part of her family, like the Corsola were part of Mika's family. The episode then ends with Ash and the gang waving goodbye to Andrea, Mika, and their father, and continuing their journey, now set for the next town on Yellow Rock Island.